Okay, we're going to get started now. Good afternoon. This is the Department of Procurement Services workshop. This is the ABCs of DBE and ACDBE. Is everybody here for that workshop? Okay. Before you came in, you should have signed the sign-in sheet out in the hallway and taken the handouts. You should have taken an evaluation form, the DPS alert card, the actual DBE, ACDBE application, and I also have out there an assist agency list because Cordell is going to talk about how assist agencies can help you with your application, just a little bit. So I have to let you know that DPS workshops are now being live streamed to YouTube. So this room is being recorded, and basically the camera is behind you, so the camera, you're not on camera. The speaker is who is on camera, so everything is to this direction. I do have to ask you to hold your questions to the end, and Cordell will repeat your question and answer your question in the end because all questions have to be spoken into the mic so that the people at home can hear your question. If you are watching from home, I just need to let people know that, and let you all know in the room, all PowerPoints can be found on the DPS website. If you go up under Events and Outreach, all PowerPoint slides can be found there, and if you want to follow along from home on a PowerPoint, you can do that. Or if the people in the room want to get the PowerPoint after you leave for reference, it can be printed from home. Okay. If you can, make sure you fill out the evaluation, and I'll be in the room at the end to collect the evaluation. We will end on time. If there are any questions after the workshops end, Cordell and I will be in the room to answer any questions that you might have. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Cordell McGarry. He is a certification officer. He does audits for files, and he's going to present this workshop. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Okay, and my name is Cordell McGarry. I'm the Senior Certification and Compliance Officer with the Department of Procurement Services. I'll be facilitating this afternoon's workshop on the DBE and ACDBE programs. To begin with, are there any in the audience that are familiar with the programs at all, or any that are certified with any of our programs? We have 5 certification programs here in the city. We're just talking about 2 of them today. Okay, well, for those of you all that aren't, I'll be more than happy to kind of guide you through the process. For those of you that are, if you have any questions or circumstances you'd like to talk about, most certainly there'll be time after the workshop to actually go into that. So with that in mind, let's begin. So, again, we're going to talk about the ACDBE, DBE program requirements. I want to talk a little bit about the process and applications and discuss the benefits of being certified as a DBE or ACDBE with the City of Chicago. And we'll touch about some of the opportunities that will occur once you're certified with the city itself. So, moving forward, at the department, where the Certification and Compliance Division is responsible for the ACDBE and DBE programs. We're part of the Department of Procurement Services, and the Department of Procurement Services, or DPS as we refer to it, is the contracting authority for the procurement of all goods and services here in the city. We actually contract over $2 billion of goods a year, and with that in mind, we pledge to work together as a team and with our customers to guarantee an open, fair, and timely process for creating opportunities for you by establishing and communicating and supporting superior business practices. We firmly believe that integrity and public trust in the law are our guiding principles, and that's the cornerstone of all of our programs, including the ones we're going to talk about today. So, again, the City of Chicago is a federal grant recipient that we receive grant funds from the Department of Transportation. And under those auspices, we are committed to having a program for contract opportunities, which we call the DBE and ACDBE program. These guidelines for the program are found in the Code of Federal Regulations. We refer to it as 49 CFR Part 26. The objectives of the program, as with all of our certification programs, is to ensure non-discrimination in the award and administration of any federal contracts in the department's highway, transit, or airport assistance programs, or include, for that matter, airport concessionaires. We strive to create a level playing field in which eligible businesses can compete for opportunities. And that's really what the program is all about. These programs are tools to help you to grow and to become established in your business endeavors, and we wish you well by having programs like this. The DBE guidelines or regulations provide guidance for our agency as well as the participants to actually come together to take advantage of these opportunities. So, going into the federal regulations, 49 part CFR Part 26 basically is the goals, the regulations for the program, and it states that a business concern must be a for-profit entity, which is at least 51% owned by one or more socially or economically disadvantaged individuals, whose management and operations are controlled by one or more of the socially and economically disadvantaged owners. And for that matter, for airport concessionaires, the definition of airport concessionaires include businesses that are not just operating at the airport as a concessionaire, but for those that provide services to concessionaires, such as management, consulting, goods and services, and advertising services to concessionaires. So, we talk about socially and economically disadvantaged, we talk about groups that are defined by the regulations as being inclusive of Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, subcontinent Asian Americans, as well as Asian Pacific Americans. Women primarily are the primary groups. There are other individuals that may not be included in those groups that I just indicated that can also, on an individual basis, make an argument or make a case for actually being included in the program by doing a statement that would individually show that they have been subject to discrimination. The program is designed to work with small businesses, and as such, we have business size standards which basically define eligible businesses for the program. Those size standards are basically set up by the Small Business Administration, and for the program, the DBE program, we look at the average gross sales of a business in this particular industry, and those gross sales must not exceed the limit for that particular industry, or a maximum of $23.98 million to be a member of the DBE program. And what I mean by that is that businesses are classified or certified by the area of specialization. So say, for example, I'm a contractor, I'm a plumber. The SBA might say, to be a small business operating as a plumber, your gross sales should not exceed, on an average of 3 years, $14 million, which means that my gross sales averaged over 3 years shouldn't exceed this amount. If it does, I'm not considered to be a small business. So the SBA guidelines actually define the regulations for small businesses by businesses that are in a certain industry. But under no circumstances should a business size exceed $23.98 million. There are some industries, for example, whereby the threshold for being a small business is actually higher than the example I gave you. I believe in certain construction trades, the gross sales could be as high as $31 million. But according to DBE regulations, under no circumstances should those gross sales exceed this number of $23.98 million. For the ACDBE program, the threshold is a little higher. It's a flat number, and it takes into account, for most cases, the investment that a typical concessionaire may have to make in order to get into an airport and the time it may take for them to recoup their profits. And then under those circumstances, the actual number is a fixed number, and it's an average of $56.42 million over 3 years. So as an ACDBE, as long as your gross sales don't exceed that number, you're considered to be a small business, believe it or not. For other businesses that operate at the airport, the number is also based, it's kind of specialized. Like, for example, car rental agencies could be a small business if they're under $75 million in average sales. If you're a bank and your assets are under $1 billion, you can be considered a small business for purposes of operating at the airport. And also, for certain types of businesses, they also count the number of employees. In addition to size standards and also being considered a member of a disadvantaged group, there's also an economic disadvantage component that we look at, and that's the personal net worth of the owners of the business. And based on that, the SBA, not the SBA rather, but the DBE program considers you eligible for consideration as a business or a DBE if your personal net worth does not exceed $1.32 million. And that number basically is calculated on your assets less the personal value of your residence and also your investment in your business. So after taking those numbers out, if your net worth is over $1.32 million, you're not considered to be economically disadvantaged, and I can understand it, to be honest with you. So after you've completed those components of eligibility, you have to go through an application process. And basically, the following steps would need to be completed to go through the application process here. Of course, that consists of completing a DBE application, That application is available hard copy or online, and online is probably the better way to do it. Okay, there we go. Okay. So the online application, if you choose to apply, could be located at our website. That website's located at www.chicago.mwdbe.com. I believe there may be some hard copy applications available on the table. If not, most certainly let me know if you desire one, and I'll make sure that you get one. But the online process most certainly is most efficient and probably the best way to go. Along with the completion of the application, you're going to provide supporting information. The application, of course, will basically make a statement that you want to be certified, and the supporting information helps us to do the evaluation to help determine your qualifications for the program itself. The process also entails an on-site interview. So we'll come out to visit you at your place of business. We'll interview you, take a look at your operation. We may take pictures just to get a sense for, what it is you do and how you do it. So, getting started, basically we will ask for a number of documents. Just to kind of touch on some of those things we'll be looking for will help us go through the process. We'll need evidence of your citizenship or legal residency in this country in order to qualify. We also want to have evidence of your business investment to start your business. Believe it or not, when you go into business, you actually have a financial contribution. It may be a couple of dollars to buy the stationery that you use to actually make the application, or it may be a substantial investment that you might make in equipment or capital just to kind of get started. We need proof of that information. We will also need business documents to help us to understand the type of business that you are. There are various forms of organization that businesses can or legally organize themselves as. You could be a sole proprietor, corporation, partnership, or what's called a limited liability corporation or LLC. No matter what form of business you choose to organize under, you need to have documentation that will help establish yourself as that particular type of business. So we will ask for certain documents. If you're a corporation, we'll probably ask for copies of your bylaws, copies of your stock certificates. If you're an LLC or limited liability corporation, we'll probably look for an operating agreement, something that pretty much establishes the business and defines how it's to do business. We want financial information on the owners, which consists of W-2 forms or 1099 forms, which will cover several years. We normally look for 3 years of information on the owners, as well as information regarding the financial state of the business. So if you've been in business for a while, we're going to be looking for 3 years of tax returns, 3 years of financial statements, and the like, to try to help us, again, to do the 3-year average of gross sales in order to determine whether or not you're a small business. If you're a startup business, however, you don't have the information available, just tell us so. We'll take that into consideration. There's nothing that will prevent you from applying if you don't have 3 years of financial statements, simply because you haven't been in business for 3 years. So, we talk about the on-site review. As part of our process, by federal regulations, we have to come out and pay you a visit. That visit most certainly will be at your place of business, wherever that may be. If you're a trucking firm, we may go out to the yard. If you're a construction business, we'll go out there. If you're an office worker, we'll visit you wherever. The purpose of the interview basically is to get acquainted with the owners of the business. Basically, what's your role in the business? How does your business operate? Again, businesses are certified in a particular area of specialization. Part of the requirements of being certified as a DBE or ACDBE involves your having an understanding of the business that you're involved in. So if I'm a plumber, for example, it's more than just hanging a shingle on the door that says I'm a plumber. I have to demonstrate that I know how to do the work that I'm asking to be certified under. Part of the online interview process is to actually go through it and help to determine whether or not that is the case. So, but in any circumstance, that is a very important part of the certification process. More often than not, we'll give you advance notice that we're coming. Every now and then, we may just pop in. So don't be surprised. Okay. So after we've had a chance to go through the application process, we've looked at your determination of eligibility by being a member of a group that's socially or economically disadvantaged, by collecting information regarding the business so that we understand the form of business that you're in, the type of services that you provide, and your ability to actually do that. We go through our evaluation process, and it basically covers these components. We look at ownership. Again, you need to be 51% or more listed as an owner of the business, and not just on paper. You need to have control of the business. You need to be a member of a group that's presumed to be disadvantaged. We talked about those qualifications there. Business size determination. Small business is defined by the Small Business Administration based upon your industry standards. Your personal net worth should not exceed $1.32 million. The last components of independence and control basically refers to your ability to understand the business that you're involved in and control that business. So in other words, it's more than just being an owner on paper. You have to be actively involved in the business, making the key decisions, having the knowledge to demonstrate that you can in fact do that. You cannot be an absentee owner, where you're actually 51% in control of the business, but you delegate all the responsibilities to someone else to run the business. You can't do that. You need to be involved. Lastly, the burden of proof is all on the applicant, and that's basically what we look at. I mean, it's up to you to explain to me that you're in business, that you can control this business, that you own this business. In other words, you're telling a story, and we need to understand that story in order to understand you and to help you get certified. Now, basically, the benefits of becoming certified with the City of Chicago as a DBE or ACDBE, first off, is there's no application fee. It's free. The certification as a DBE or ACDBE basically also involves you an opportunity to participate in contracts not just with the City of Chicago, but with several other groups that are combined with the city, form an organization known as the Illinois Certification Program. Those groups are the City of Chicago, Illinois Department of Transportation, CTA, Metra, and PACE. And what I mean by that is that once you're certified as a DBE with any one of those agencies, you're certified with all of them. You can participate in contract opportunities with them as they come about. So your certification has some real great benefits in that as opportunities come about at the CTA, Metra, PACE, you can also bid on those contracts as well. We also have a relationship with a number of assist agencies, local chambers of commerce, for example, that can help us to help you. And they can provide you with a lot of technical assistance, not just for the certification programs, but for just doing business. I mean, they're a great resource, and we ask that you kind of, seek them out and take advantage of what they have to offer. Okay. Our program, we feel, not just provides an opportunity for, let's say, participation in one contract, but in basic contract opportunities throughout, the City of Chicago, Metra, PACE, CTA, and as such, we look at it as a tool that will help you to grow. And it demonstrates our commitment to helping businesses to grow in the City of Chicago, to supply diversity and the success of minority and women-owned businesses. So we look at that as being a cornerstone of a program that's designed to kind of help you. There is a process for the application review and completion, and we try to do that within 90 days. With regard to the time that you give us the application with supporting documents, the review time, and the like, we try to endeavor to give you a decision within that time frame. It can vary depending on the completeness and thoroughness of the application. So we'll take a moment and kind of touch on that a little bit. For example, when we give you the application and you return it to us, we want to understand again, basically, what kind of business are you in? How are you organized? What's your role in the business? All those things are important. So when I talk about telling the story, it's important that you do that. If we have questions concerning what your role in the business is, or whether or not you have expertise in a certain area that you're seeking certification in, we're going to have to ask questions. We give you time to respond to that. That process itself can add additional time to our certification process. So we talk about 90 days, we're talking about an average of 90 days for that period to occur. Once you're certified as a DBE pretty much indefinitely. And as I mentioned earlier, you're certified with the various agencies, IDOT, Metra, PACE, and CTA. But what I mean by certified indefinitely, there is no expiration date on your certification. You're certified until there's cause for you to no longer be certified. We do have a requirement that once you're certified with the city or as a DBE, that on an annual basis you provide us with an affidavit that pretty much attests to the fact that there has not been any changes in your ownership composition or your net worth that would cause you no longer to be certified. If you move, for example, if there's a change in your ownership structure, say you take on a partner or you add additional services, that will be a great time to let us know. So on an annual basis, at a minimum, we do ask you to submit what's called a no-change affidavit. Normally, we'll reach out to you to do that. In the event that we reach out to you and you don't provide us with the information, we'll give you maybe a couple of times to respond. In any event that you don't, that could lead to being decertified. And of course, if you are tremendously successful and your gross sales exceed the standards for which you've been certified under, you're considered to be graduated from the program and no longer eligible. But that's a good thing because we all want to be successful, right? And that's what we're looking at. So with that in mind, we try to also help you in that sense by having alerts that kind of give you updated information about what's happening. We have a system in the Department of Procurement Services and the Department of Aviation that's called alerts, an alert system. In the Department of Procurement Services, we call it DPS alerts. It's a system that I would recommend you all subscribe to. It's a way to communicate with you about all the things that are going on in the city. As contract opportunities come up, opportunities for bid, you'll be notified by email as to what's going on. All the workshops that are going on, not just in our department, but in other departments, we also kind of share this information with you. So it's a great resource and a tool to help you grow the business. And all of our contracting opportunities can be found online. So, you can also go online to our website and just do a search. But of course, I'm going to tell you, the DPS alerts is probably the most efficient way to do that. So, also on our DPS alert system, we provide you with a list of assist agencies that I mentioned before that can help you provide assistance to you, not just in getting certified, but on an ongoing basis by way of providing, let's say, marketing assistance or advice as to maybe how to grow your business. So these are great resources. So again, we want to encourage you to take advantage of those opportunities to participate in the development of your business. So for the most part, that does conclude the discussion we had about the program, and the floor is open for any questions that you may have at this point. I thank you. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Originally, I first registered my company in 2013. I don't remember how I started. If I take my credit card, or I'm usually good at keeping stuff, and I might have to do a search. And they're saying probably like a check. So, what would I like? Certain things they're asking me to submit. What would I do?
Okay.
If I can't find the payment source, which I have to do research to see if I paid the credit card, my bank account. I'm not sure.
So if I understand your question actually pertains to providing evidence that you've contributed money to start your business. And you want to know how to do that. You started your business several years ago. The paperwork that you had at the time you no longer have. You don't remember if you paid by credit card or by check, and those records aren't available. Well, that's understandable, believe it or not. And if it's been several years since you started your business, you might not have that information. I mean, who would think to keep a credit card receipt for stationery that they bought 5 years ago when they started their business? They didn't realize how significant that could be. That's understandable. What you can do in cases like that is to provide a statement to that effect of what you actually contributed to the business. I would recommend that you have that statement notarized, and that could suffice in many cases. Okay, I'm going to go with the lady first and then you. Okay.
Having already received certification for WBE, been through the process and know how arduous process it is getting the application together. So in going for the airport certification, would you say that there's a lot of information that can be reused if you've done it very recently within the past couple of months that can be reused for the airport certification, or is this an entirely new? What percent can be reused? What percent would you say is new information for airport certification?
Okay, so again, you're certified as a WB, a woman-owned business. And those recent certification, I take it, and you're looking now to seek certification as an ACDBE. And you're curious as to what kind of documents can be used. Essentially, the certification process is not much different between the programs, in that the information that you provided for the certification as a WBE can, in fact, be used for the DBE, ACDBE process, but however, you will still need to produce that information. So, because it's a separate file, it's separate programs. Our WBE program is what I call local programs that they're governed under local ordinance, while the DBE and ACDBEs are federal programs that are governed under federal regulations. So those regulations require that there be separate information for each program. So the information that, for example, you had to provide 3 years of tax returns for your WBE certification. We'll look for the same thing for the DBE, ACDBE program. So pretty much for the most part, it should be pretty easy for you to assemble the information because you've already done it for the most part.
And is it correct that if you do submit the application for certification that you are then able to participate
No, you will need to be certified at the time of submission of a bid. So, for example, if you're certified as a woman-owned business and you want to bid on a contract at the airport that might require you to be ACDBE certified or be a subcontractor on a contract, that requirement will need to be met at the time of submission of the bid. Okay. Sir, you have a question? Okay. And in both cases, complete the application process, and the sooner the better. I mean, and I can't say that it's going to take as long to get certified, but I would be remiss to tell you that it was going to be easier. I mean, because both programs require due diligence. So most certainly applies.
You have a number here for questions, if I have additional questions after today, because I know there are other things that I needed to submit, and I was just skeptical. I can't remember off the top of my head. I remember that specific because I'm just like, how am I going to find that check? Who would I call? Do I call the same 312 number?
The number is 312-744-4900 if there are any questions regarding the program. 4900. And that number will route you to any certification officer. We're all on duty. We're all available to answer questions. I'll give you my card if you want to, before you leave, if you have any general questions. It will be a separate application. I'm sorry? Okay, let me restate your question, okay? Your question pertained to also becoming certified as a WBE as well as an ACDBE, and we want to know whether or not you need to complete a separate application for that program and whether or not you can do them both simultaneously. The answer to your question in all cases is yes. That's one great feature of the online process is you can go online and you can actually work on both applications at your leisure. You have time to do it. You can submit them all at the same time. I would say, however, with regard to the WBE program as well as the MBE programs, there is an application fee that you will have to pay. But, I mean, aside from that, most certainly there's nothing to prevent you from doing them all at the same time. And if you're going to do WBE, you should also look at all the certifications like minority certification as well, because one, you can get minority certification, you can serve as a minority as well as a woman-owned business without paying the additional fee if you do it all at the same time.
Okay, so with this application that I already started, where in that link would I go to add those?
Okay, so when you go in, you're going to go in, apply for certification. You're going to choose the program that you seek to be certified in, and you'll complete that application. You'll do the same thing for the other programs as well. So it'll guide you to the correct application. Okay, I had a question. Okay, yes, ma'am. I'm sorry.
I filled out for this when a couple of years ago when I did the double minority, and I also did the DBE. No one ever got back to me. I did it twice. I did it online, and I also went to 94th and Lafayette when CTA had, when you all was there for CTA, and I did a hard copy. And I kept calling, so I got disgusted and just didn't pursue it anymore. What have changed now that make things better for us who's trying to get certified?
Okay. First off, let me apologize for any inconveniences that you may have had in the past. I can't speak to, I wasn't aware of those, so I can't say I know much about it, but I can help you if you have any questions regarding that. So I'm going to give you my card. We'll talk more in particular about your circumstances. With regard to what's changed since then, well, one thing that's changed is that the department itself is, the certification process has been moved from what was then considered the Office of Compliance to the Department of Procurement Services, where we're now working with a dynamic commissioner who has a commitment to small businesses, and as such, she wants to make sure that we don't have circumstances like what happened to you happen again. So that's the first thing. We have a dedicated staff that's I would say, considerably knowledgeable about the programs and regulations, and we're available to help. So I'm going to give you, again, I want you to, after the meeting, we'll talk about your circumstances. I'll see what I can do to help that. Yes, sir. Okay. The 5 certification programs that we offer, they're grouped into 2 categories. I call local programs and federal programs. Today we're talking about the federal programs, and that's the DBE program for Disadvantaged Business Enterprises and the ACDBE, which is Airport Concession Disadvantaged Business Enterprises. The other 3 programs are local programs. They're governed under the city ordinance, and they are the MBE, or Minority Business Enterprise Program, the WBE, Women Business Enterprise Program, and the third one, which would be business enterprises for for businesses that are owned by people with disabilities. And the acronyms could be, let's say, MBE, WBE, and BEPD would be the acronyms for those local programs. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So if I understand your question, you're an architect, right? Are you already certified, or you're already certified as I'm sorry, you're certified as a DBE? Okay, but let's just say you're certified, okay? Because at the time of certification, you want to get certified in all the areas that you work in. But let's say you're certified already, and now you want to add on. So in your case, you're an architect, you want to add on a certain construction specialty that your company does. So what you're going to do is seek to expand your area certification to include this area specialization that you can control and that you're involved in. Again, that's called an expansion of services. The process for doing that basically involves you making a formal request, preferably on your corporate letterhead, with regard to describing what it is you seek to be certified in. Again, we're telling the story. You're also going to provide information to support the activity that you're involved in. So again, I'm an architect, but I also have a plumbing background. And I served as an apprentice as a plumber. And I've done work as a plumber. So, let's use it as an example. Okay, so I'm going to provide evidence of my activity in this area to control that. If I have a partner that's involved in the business, and assuming that the partner and we are in control of business, and that partner has certain skills and expertise, of course, you're going to demonstrate that, that the company is capable of doing this, and this is how we do it, and this is how we control it. So again, you would be able to do that. I would say again, so the question is assist agencies. How are they composed? Many of our assist agencies are local chambers of commerce, like the South Shore Chamber of Commerce, the Chatham Business Association, Hispanic American Construction Industry, HACIA, I think is the acronym for that group. Those are groups that are non-for-profit groups that are organized to try to help local, community businesses to thrive. Those are our assist agencies. Some of them may receive grant monies from different sources, and some of those sources may be federal, but they're not necessarily a federal agency in that sense. Okay? Yes, sir. And then.
Professional services, are there any differentiation between professional services and construction and all the rest of them? Are there classifications for certification, and are the requirements the same for classification?
Okay. So the question is whether or not there's any differences in the area specialization, i.e., professional services as opposed to construction services, and whether or not the requirements are different. The Small Business Administration has a process called the North American Industrial Classification System. We refer to it as NACIS, the NACIS system. And pretty much what that system embarks upon is to classify businesses by the industry and areas that they're operating in. So in the area of professional services, you have accountants, you have lawyers, you have professional people in that sense. Well, there are industry classifications for those activities, and you can be certified in those areas. Now, the qualifications, again, the application is going to be the same. The application process will be the same. You would need to demonstrate your proficiency and control in that particular area. So. The net worth will be the same for the DBE. Yeah. And then consider it, if you have a net worth of over $1.3 million, can you really say you're economically disadvantaged? That'd be a good position to be in. Yes, ma'am.
Just want to clarify, there are 5 different certification programs.
Yes.
And in order to be certified in the 5 categories, you have to make separate applications for each one of the 5.
No. So, okay. We have 5 certification programs. Do you need to make an application for each certification program? Not necessarily. the DBE and ACDBE programs, by the big federal programs, one application can cover both of them. So you can, if you choose to apply for DBE and ACDBE at the same time, just one application is required. The local programs works the same way. If you're a woman, a minority, and you happen to also be disabled, you can apply for all 3 programs with that one application.
And what again is the DBE qualifications? Who's qualified for it?
Okay. The DB program basically operates under the presumption of being socially and/or economically disadvantaged. Now, let me pause to say that all of our programs has a bit of economic disadvantage in it. So, because you have to be a small business, and in some cases, your net worth may have a threshold. So, the difference between DBE and the MBE programs is that the DBE program does not specifically say this is for minorities or this is for women. It basically says if you're a member of a group that that happens to be woman, happens to be black, that happens to be Hispanic, that happens to be Native American, you are presumed to have been a victim of discrimination as documented historically. So you're considered to be disadvantaged. Our local programs basically are targeted specifically toward minorities, toward women, toward people that have disabilities. So if you fall into one of those categories, that will be the definition of those programs. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
The agencies for the city of Chicago, IDOT, CPA, do you have reciprocity with any other, like what about Cook County? If you're qualified for the city of Chicago, are you qualified for
So again, with the DBE programs, once you're certified as a DBE, you're automatically considered to be certified with CTA, for DBE and ACDBE, with Metra, with PACE, with the Illinois Department of Transportation. We're all recipients of federal dollars, and as mandated under federal regulation, we operate together as part of a group that's known as the Illinois Unified Certification Program. So there's reciprocity automatically as a DBE with all those agencies in the state of Illinois. Now, having said that, we have local programs. And in some cases, there is reciprocity. For example, the city of Chicago, through its local programs as an MBE and WBE, also have reciprocity with Cook County's MBE and WBE certification programs. So there's no need to really be certified with both, because one certification will do. Okay. But keep in mind, other governmental bodies, such as the Illinois Department of Central Management Services, they may have their own programs, and they're governed under their own local structure. So as such, you would need to look at those groups and see whether or not they may have reciprocity. But I would probably consider applying for, on an individual basis for those programs. Yes, sir.
So I understand you have to be economically and socially disadvantaged. If you're not in the presumed class for the social disadvantage, how would you prove that up and present that?
Okay. You can make I call it a case, an argument, for consideration on a case-by-case basis, and it's called an individual determination of social disadvantage. And I'm sorry, yeah, the question basically pertained to whether or not a person that's not a member of a presumed group to be considered socially disadvantaged, whether or not they can in fact apply for certification nevertheless. And the answer is yes, you can on a case-by-case basis. It's called an individual determination of social disadvantage. In the regulations, there's a process by which you would follow to actually try to make this case. Now, again, it's going to be a case-by-case basis, and you're making let's say not an argument, but you're making a position that I didn't want to be considered as being socially disadvantaged based upon these factors, and my having experienced certain things that would cause me to be no different from anybody that's already socially disadvantaged. There's a process. I can give you the information on that.
Sure, this would be a first-person narrative. That's typically
I've seen them done first person. I've seen them done third person. I mean, there's no particular way. It's a process, a statement that you need to make. Okay. Yes, sir.
As far as the agencies that become available to you upon completing an application to be certified, now, the standards that are used are dictated in the contractual references of information.
Okay, I want to understand your question. You're saying that the process for being certified or the process for participation in the contract?
Right. Like the standards that you I just went through for participation, and then ultimate selection is dependent on your merit or what are ultimate dependencies.
Okay.
Or receiving a contract.
Okay, so I want to be clear I understand the question, because the question actually covered, it seemed to be covering two areas. So there's an area called certification, and there's another area that's called participation in a contract after I get certified, and there's a difference. Okay, so there's a process that we talked about today that actually covered how to get certified, the process for being, being certified as a disadvantaged-owned business or, a business as an ACDBE. So once you've gone through that process, you're certified, right? As an entity that's covered under this group. Now, that certification, again, you've heard me make references to it as being a tool. It's a tool that you use to take advantage of an opportunity once the opportunity presents itself. Now, the contracting process is different from the certification process, and it's separate from the standpoint that I'm a part of a group that does certification, but I'm not involved in contracts. I don't grant contracts. I don't evaluate your ability to perform on a contract. That's a process that's done by another group of individuals. But the contract opportunity, when you hear about it, it may say, well, okay, I want to set aside a portion of this opportunity for disadvantaged businesses, DBEs. That's your entree by having the certification. So again, as a tool, that gets you to the point where you can actually now compete for that contract. And it's all about competition. There's no guarantee. Okay? Okay. Okay.
What exactly that gentleman in the architect's question about his partner provides other services and related to the certification? If they are partners, do they both have to individually qualify under one of the certifications, or if one of them owns the company 51%, I believe is the qualification, then the other partner does not have to qualify as an individual. It's just the company.
The company has to qualify. The company is certified. The individuals behind the company we do look at. So, say for example, we have your question. So let me restate the question again. So, if I hear correctly, we have a business that's composed of two individuals. One person is 51% owner, the other is 49% owner. They each have individual skills and talents. And so the question is whether or not they both have to be in a controlling position in order for those skills and talents to be part of the certification process. Not necessarily. Okay. And
The one who's making the application owns control company by 51% and qualifies under the certification program, and the other partner is just part of the company.
well, you want to look at the role all of the people play in the company. The company is certified.
Company is certified so they can be certified to provide other services other than what that one individual who controls 51%. Let's take a specific example.
Okay,
We have
okay.
two partners, a white man and a black man.
Okay.
Black man controls the company 51%.
Okay.
Black man brings architectural services, and so under the NAICS codes, they qualify for that. And the white partner does plumbing. And so now they are coming together, and they are going to be qualified for both of those services, even though the white man makes $5 million and doesn't qualify for any of the other conditions.
Okay.
The whole company.
So in this case, we're talking about a DBE firm, obviously. The African American or black individual with 51% ownership has architectural background. The minority partner, who happens to be Caucasian, has a 49% interest, and he has background in plumbing. Can the businesses be certified in both areas? Technically, I will say yes, but a lot of it will depend upon the degree of control of the 51% owner. Again, the 51% owner has to be more than just owner on paper. I would expect the 51% owner to have at least a smidgen of understanding as to what his partner is doing, to have an understanding of the process that his partner is engaged in, so that if a decision had to be made relative to the business, that 51% partner would have an understanding enough to make that decision. You have to be able to control the policy. You don't necessarily have to drive the nail into the stake, but you have to have understanding as to what that process involves, because you're making business decisions, and that's really what we're looking at. Yes, sir.
I think a similar question that Steve asked, I mean, you have the 51% majority owner, but maybe his partner has a net worth of $5 million. Does that disqualify? I think that's the kind of question that Steve's asking. Well, that's a question.
Okay, from an economic standpoint, the question for me would be, what does the $5 million net worth of the individual represent to the company? For example, I mean, one of the things I may be looking at is the nature of the structure of the business. Was the business structured to, evade this component because the 49% owner has too much money, so we're not going to put me in charge because I wouldn't qualify however you do? That may be a little suspect. The other question might be, okay, what resources is the 49% owner bringing to the company? Okay, and would that in fact compromise the independence of the 51% owner? Because it's all about control when you look at it from that standpoint. Yes, sir.
Yes, my question is along the same lines, but it's not so much economic driven. It's more so, what if the 51% owner is not skilled, but as long as you have brain, if I'm hearing when you mention control, so as long as there's some type of quality control plan in place, where let's say if you're a real estate company, but you have a partner that does construction, for example, that construction individual that's your partner would be a certified, let's say, general contractor. But the predominant owner of the company is not a certified general contractor. So for those types of contracts, all the majority owner can really do is just kind of have a check and balance system over the activities of that general contract. But they wouldn't, from knowing the nuances of the job, that majority owner wouldn't know that.
So if I hear you correctly, we have a circumstance involving an owner of a company who has no experience in a particular facet of the business. So I'm a real estate salesperson, I'm a real estate broker, and I have a partner who is involved in construction. Okay, can I be certified as construction? And I'm a 51% owner. I wouldn't think so. What's missing there is the ability of the 51% owner to control or direct the affairs of the business independently of the person that actually has experience. In other words, there's a dependency here that we're looking at. The majority owner is dependent upon the minority owner, and I'm presuming that the minority owner in this case is Caucasian, as opposed to being a minority.
What if they were a minority?
Okay, so the question then again pertains to the role that they're playing in the business. I mean, in some cases, if they're both minority and they both own the business, then we have a situation where the business is 100% minority owned, right?
Correct.
And the minority owner happens to have an understanding of the business, correct?
Correct.
In that circumstance, it may work. Because we're seeing in that situation, but again, I would stress that, you want to, as a business owner, majority interest, you want to be intricately involved in the affairs of that business.
Of course.
I mean, so, keep that in mind. I mean, it may be harder if the person with the real estate experience was not an owner, with the construction experience was not an owner at all. I mean, that's a little different. You want to be in control of the business, not just on paper, but, and you want to be able to make decisions independent of outside influence. And that's basically what we're looking at. Okay. Well, I hope I've answered everybody's questions. I want to thank you for coming to today's workshop. And I also want you to remember that all of our workshops are now being live streamed to YouTube at Chicago DPS. And if there are any other questions, we'll stay, just to kind of answer those questions. So again, I'm Cordell McGarry. I thank you for coming. And I look forward to talking to you soon. Okay. Okay. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Okay. No problem. All right, okay. Did I speak to you yesterday? Going so vegetarian?
Maybe. I was outside, but no,
Okay.
I'm out there.
Okay. All right. No problem.